1, 2, 3. Up. 1, 2, 3.
Yay!
My name is Judy Strachan. I'm one of the leaders of leaders of the women's group. And I wanted to remind you that 3 years ago now, believe it or not, it's been 3 years, we joined the organization, or we became the second congregation to be a congregation of the organization Sacred, or the Spiritual Alliance for the Community of, I can't even remember what it's, for the Spiritual Alliance of Communities for Reproductive Dignity. Yeah. And we're going to have to re-up this year. So I'm going to spend a minute reminding you of what we committed to. We committed to 3 major things. There was guidelines we agreed to, but this is what we committed to. We committed to creating a loving, justice-seeking faith community where shame, judgment, and stigma for diverse reproductive decisions and journeys has no place. We committed to supporting the work of parenting and the healthy growth of children in safe, sustainable, nurturing communities. And we committed to advocating for equitable access to the full spectrum of comprehensive reproductive health care as a moral and social good. We support the fulfillment of reproductive moral agency for all. So it's 3 years later now, and we've hosted speakers. We've forged a relationship with Planned Parenthood, which Louise is going to tell you more about. We've joined rallies and marches, and we've created the banner that we're celebrating today, which supports our values. But we have a lot left to do. We're not in fact, in some ways, I think we've lost ground, sadly, in the last year or so. And so we have a lot left to do. And so that's pretty much it. I'm glad you're here. Oh, I forgot one thing that we've done, and I want to celebrate our religious education area for having sponsored family nights, nights for parent goes out night, and other things, game nights and things like that. All these things to support our families. So I think they deserve a round of applause as well. But anyway, like I said, we have a lot to do, but Louise is going to give us a little more detail about what we've been up to.
So good to see all of you here, and I hope you're enjoying the lunch. First of all, thank you for helping us celebrate. And I'm just providing an update of our recent work. So since we're part of Planned Parenthood's Clergy for Reproductive Freedom, we were invited to their annual Capitol Day in Sacramento to gather in solidarity on April 1st, along with several other volunteers from Planned Parenthood, Northern Planned Parenthood districts. So there are about 200 or 300 of us there, and 5 of us from San Francisco. Lori Lai and I met with Christian Garcia. He's the Vice President of Government Relations and Communications. Some of you may remember he was invited here by us to speak at the forum last year, about a year ago. And so he was our lead. We were assigned to small groups to meet with our local state assembly members and a state representative, that being Scott Wiener. And we were there to share our stories, and the stories were all revolving around the bills that our assembly members are sponsoring. There's 6 bills. I will have them posted out on the front Women's Rights Group bulletin board. 4 of them seek to improve access to safe abortion care, including medication abortion, stabilizing STI testing, reimbursement rates, ensuring protection to continue to provide care for the Medicaid patients from the hostile federal cuts. And then 2 of them are seeking to protect the privacy and data of transgender, gender diverse, and what's called intersex, or TGI, patients of all genders and providers to protect their safety. So with that, we were able to tell our stories. They were very welcoming and receptive to our stories to help substantiate why we support those bills. And so anyway, there was several hundred like-minded volunteers, and the energy was really positive. So I feel jazzed up about what the work we're going to be doing moving forward. And in addition to that, if you would like to take some action steps today for more involvement, I have several of these on the back table. You can take a peek at them. They're contacting your assembly, Congress, and writing your comments. You can send them through an email or give them to us, and we'll make sure they're delivered. And I will also post the bills, and that's the action steps. So one really cool thing is Planned Parenthood's new campaign, since we're allied with them nowadays, their campaign is Here for Good, in which they're going to reaffirm their commitment to patients and supporters fighting for health equity and to protect access to healthcare. And the next big step we're doing, and I'm really psyched about this because it involves our guest speaker today, is we have been invited by Sacred to get retrained for the new and updated training in May in New Orleans. And so I agreed to go. And we'll come back with all that information and see how we're going to collect that, what action we can take, and how to move forward with that information with our members. And the cool thing is that Antoinette is going to be there too. So I was really psyched to find that out. So that's about all I have to share. And I'm really excited to hear what everybody else has to share. And thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Reverend Millie Phillips, affiliated community minister with this congregation. And before I do the land acknowledgement, I want to mention that we don't do this just to check off something on a list. We do this because however we or our ancestors arrived on this land, and not all of us had ancestors that arrived voluntarily, and many had ancestors who arrived under duress, we are all living on stolen land, nonetheless. And we all have a responsibility to those who are on this land originally and who are still among us. And because we all live on stolen land, we have no right to refer to anyone on this land as illegal. So here's the acknowledgement itself. We want to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. We recognize that these people cared for and stewarded this land for generations before our arrival. We call attention to the history of the US and the state of California towards these peoples through state-sanctioned and state-funded genocide, residential boarding schools, and laws and courts that sought to erase Indigenous people altogether. We recognize how these systems and structures continue to impact the dignity of Indigenous peoples today, including reproductive dignity. This history compels us to take action to interrupt the legacies of colonialism and genocide, and calls us to take meaningful action, building authentic and mutual relationships with tribes and Indigenous communities toward justice and sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Millie. And I just want to add to what Millie said that, as many of you know, the East Bay Ramaytush Ohlone, a group of women have started the rematriation process of land and planting kind of heritage crops. And we take 1 or 2 offerings a year in worship for the Sogorea Land Trust, which is their request that is sort of a land tax to support the rematriation of the land. So I think it is more in our practice and the ways in which we answer the invitation to be more deeply committed to the work. Hopefully we continue to do that. It's great to see you all here. I'd love to see all the red. I know for some of us, this is our only red item of clothing, but we dusted it off, some of us, for today, made sure it was pressed. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful to have our incredible women's reproductive rights, and reproductive rights activists group in this congregation, all the work that we've done, of which this is just a piece in a spectrum of work that goes back years and will carry forward years. And we are connected to that work through our Unitarian Universalist history. The Dallas UU congregation helped fund Roe versus Wade, right? And Sacred came out of that congregation's committed work. And we're lucky to have, you'll hear more about Antoinette Marie Scully here today, but I love that she's here as part, that they are there here as part of the Women's Federation. And so this connection, ongoing connection to the denomination, that we're not alone in this work, and we need not to be alone in the work, that we gather power and strength and insight and connection in doing it together. So I think one thing to note on this Sunday when we hung the public banner and we're gathering again to deepen the conversation is an acknowledgement that was part of a conversation that Lori had with me, which I think is a wonderful sharpening of our sense of ourselves in relationship to this work, that this isn't, we hope, just something that we do as First U Society of San Francisco, but that this is something that we are a center for a vision and a voice for reproductive justice, and the place of this piece of our lives in the moral conversation and in our spiritual lives, right? That it comes out of that, all that work of our whole lives, the curriculum that we teach our young people. That's the newest version of a curriculum we have been trying to teach our young people, and there are adult versions of it. So anyone who wants to do the adult version of OWL, we can have that too. And that this is about being an anchor as a community that includes in our sense of our religious and spiritual values an acknowledgement and an exploration of the holiness and the sacrality of our lives as sexual beings. That includes our tending to our own and one another's reproductive lives and choices, that piece of our spiritual and human journey that are intertwined, like all parts that should be value-centered, justice-centered, caring, compassionate, and visionary, and public. In a world that can be secretive and sometimes shameful about important information about our reproductive lives at each stage, that we speak for some different vision of that piece of our lives, a joyful, fully embodied, whole vision. That in a society that also, on the other hand, sometimes can be exploitative and amplifies in destructive ways, an understanding or a framing of that piece of our lives, that we speak for a different vision and wholeness. And in a world that sometimes wants to respond to one another's sexual identity or expression in ways that show fear or an effort to control in ways that are abusive and dangerous, that we are here to add ourselves to the places where people can come to be held in a different understanding of that work, where they can find their voices and how to speak to that sense that they have that there is a moral injury in this way of being together, and that we can be and hold honest and open and value-centered conversations that serve in the largest, most informed, most compassionate and wise ways, how we step into an integration of this piece of us into ourselves, all of us as moral and spiritual beings walking in just and loving and whole ways in the world. And so we gather again and again and again, we will gather in this journey of learning from one another in how to serve and how to advocate so that we can be, as Lori named, and I appreciate that, this anchoring spiritual place for this piece of our work as a community of faith. And so I just want to say, as one of the spiritual leaders, we're all called to spiritual leadership, my blessings on this time together, and that we find in it some bigger piece, some greater hold of what that will mean for us, with deep gratitude to Lori Lai and to Judy and to Louise and to Janet and to Chantel and to other members of the Reproductive Justice team, to Millie, to everyone who's been part of this and continues to be part of this work, to Antoinette and to Jolly for coming along too, as part of our Unitarian Universalist larger family, and leaders in the world of being in conversation. So thank you both for coming from the City of Angels to bless us with your angelic wings and wisdom, and also to call us into greater connection to our siblings and remind us by your literal and metaphorical presence here of the connection to our larger community of siblings in this work and this piece of our calling. So with that, I want to say with deep gratitude and blessings that I'm grateful to be here, and thank you for making this possible, everybody.
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this event. And my job here is to mainly explain why reproductive rights equals everyone's rights, because that's what our banner says. Okay, so I think we'll start with what we really agree on, and we have to say that, we all agree on reproductive dignity, and everyone should be able to make decisions, including reproductive decisions, with dignity and throughout their life. So we all agree on that, right? We all agree on reproductive justice, bodily autonomy, having children and not having children. These are all reproductive decisions. And for the children that we do have, we want safe and sustainable communities for the children. And I think nobody disagrees with that. Okay. And we all kind of prioritize in when we talk about reproductive rights, we all prioritize one reproductive right for some people in our population, the human right not to have children. This is mostly centered on people that identify as females, people who can have children or have babies, and that's what we prioritize. But now, as we all kind of understand, we do have a lot of powerful forces that require us to consider and expand and become more inclusive about reproductive rights for all people. So I don't have to go over this litany, but we have a government trifecta, working class, stagnation, post-COVID economy, still recovering, biased media, especially social media, but a lot of people are in bubbles. And then, of course, we have Christian nationalism, and there's also a lot of white grievance that we've been hearing, and political polarization. And really and truly, it's a lot. So what do we have to do about it? So I think we have to be understanding that if we continue as we are going along and expecting a different result, we might not be able to have that different result. So I think I feel that they're forcing us to, all of these factors are forcing us to become more inclusive about reproductive rights and advocate for everyone in the population to have all the reproductive rights. The right not to have children, and we should think about contraception for all, including male identified or people that are males, and then comprehensive and reproductive health care, including men, to have children, to think about IVF for everyone, and also infertility prevention. I think many men do not realize that environmental factors like being exposed to different chemicals at work might affect their fertility. So these are all things that I think when people think, oh, it's not everyone's right, but it is everyone's right, and everyone is affected. That's my point. Safe and sustainable communities. There are a lot of people that can barely afford a roof over their head, and they don't make enough money, and many of them feel like they can't, they're just forced not to have children because they can't afford them. And stable living wage is very important for families and stability to ensure, happy, healthy families. Bodily autonomy. It's really sexual assault happens to everyone, including men. And we should have accessible sexual support for all victims. So these are some of the things where we can widen our world and widen the inclusion in reproductive rights. So this is sort of arbitrary, and this may not be your exact priorities, but I've noticed from an advocacy perspective, the movement has a comfort zone with different identity groups, and that level might vary. For example, she, her, them, college grads were very comfortable talking to, for example, and then of course, he, him, them, college grads, we may also feel comfortable talking to. And then it goes down from that to people with no degrees. And there are a lot of people that may not feel like we're actually talking to them or even caring about them. Unfortunately, it's not what we feel, but maybe what they feel. So working class people might not feel like they're part of that conversation. And that has to change if we're going to change the country, the world, for a betterment of advancement of reproductive rights. So as a movement, we could just work on the reproductive rights for each identity group separately, Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and everybody. But I think we should consider that it really makes more sense to adopt an all-in approach for everyone and build community. Have an all-in plan where everybody feels included, everybody feels cared for, spoken to, and just basically part of this reproductive rights movement. And there's really 4 essential components to address. Number one, I think, and a lot of people may not see that exactly, but working class people, I think, see it very much so. Making safe and secure environments affordable. That is like number one. And that has, affordable housing, that has to be all in for happy reproductive choices, happy lives, happy families. You can't have that unless you have this. And there's so many barriers to achieving that for people that are making minimum wage or just a bit above minimum wage with no degrees. Also, increasing access to IVF. That is the right to have children, and many people that want children have to wait for so long that it's now it's almost impossible. They need services, and I think that should be much more accessible and affordable. And I think access to reproductive health care for all. Many men may not be aware that without STI testing, they may have problems later on with fertility. It's, these are things that are not very much discussed, and many people don't have access to healthcare. And then, of course, stop violence. I mean, that is bedrock. Bodily autonomy and being able to have freedom from violence is everybody's right. So the ideal outcome, I don't have all the answers, but I think the ideal outcome is really a community-centered solution. And it really has to be asking everyone what they need, how they can participate, what can we do to be cooperative, collaborative, and getting solutions that work for everyone in the community, not just for some. So, I'm not going to pretend that this is an easy situation and that we can solve it in a day or even a year or even 10 years. But really and truly, community centers take money, they take time, they take focus, and we have to almost reorient ourselves to have a solution that works for everyone, because reproductive rights are everyone's rights, and teamwork makes the dream work. So if we do this right, San Francisco could be the all-in reproductive rights model. We could have all-inclusive reproductive rights that support the worth and dignity of all of us. And it's going to take a lot of effort. So stay for Haley's calling in. This is the making change with those that you'd rather cancel. That's going to be very important, because we have to have these difficult conversations. We have to have the skills, And it's just not going to be easy. There's a lot of trust that has to be built up, and it's not going to happen right away. But we can work towards it, and we will work towards it. Next, we're going to hear a lot more about community building from Antoinette Scully. She's our membership and community engagement specialist from the UU Women's Federation. They are responsible for relationship building, both from within and outside our UU universe. This includes ongoing program development and supporting resources that we create outside of work. They support local activists, projects in the LA area. They have a background in social justice, facilitation, as well as conflict resolution, and are the mother of two. They hold a master's degree in teaching from the University of Southern California and a dual bachelor's in humanities and philosophy from Stenson University in DeLand, Florida. And there's free time, which I'm not sure how much they have, they like to read and kayak. Antoinette Scully, everybody.
It's so lovely to be with all of you. Oh, look at that. You guys can fiddle with that's totally fine. I'm actually going to start with a little bit of embodied movement. So I need to move. I need to move to get myself a little bit more relaxed. I would love for you, if you'd like to stand, you can do this standing or sitting. So it is accessible to both. A friend of mine, Heather Vickery at the UU Service Committee, taught me this, and she learned it from probably a DRE at some other congregation. You know how a thing moves from place to place in that like collective UU universe? So she calls this the social justice stretch. So the first part of it is to reach down to your toes, or as far as you can, down to the grassroots. Reach down to the grassroots. Reach up to the sky and your ancestors for inspiration. Swirl the winds of change. Trying to do this while I'm still at the mic. Swirl the winds of change and stomp out injustice. Want to do it again? Reach down to the grassroots. Reach up to the sky. Swirl the winds of change. Stamp out injustice. A little faster. Reach down. Reach up. Swirl the winds of change. Step out injustice. Yeah, are we feeling good? We're feeling mobile? I know I'm going to talk for a minute, but hey, I need to feel a little loose, right? Thank you so much for doing that with me. So yes, as everyone has said, my name is Antoinette. My pronouns are they and them. I'm a shorter than average, mid-sized Black femme presenting person. I've got shoulder length locks with some lovely jewels. Okay. And I'm wearing a red dress with cream colored flowers. That's an example of some of the accessibility that we like to do both at Women's Federation and at the national level, called a visual description. So for folks who are online or even in the room present who are low vision or blind, it's a little bit helpful to give a little bit of a description of what I look like. And something as simple as I like to kayak kind of reminds you of who I am. And so, yeah, I'm at the Women's Federation. I'm gonna see if I've got my slides pulled up as well, but I can see that you're good. That's good. Yeah. Nice. And so the Women's Federation is this wonderful organization that builds communities. Like that's our whole mission, is building relationships among UU women and gender expansive people that equip us to become better co-conspirators and allies in the movement for collective liberation. And so the Women's Federation has been around for quite a long time. And over the past couple of years, we've done some reconfiguring, figuring out what we like and what we don't like, trying to update ourselves to be relevant in this time. And you can see that we have a little bit of an asterisk of clarification. While we look forward to a day when it's not necessary to add this clarification, at this time we want to explicitly say that when we say women, we mean all women, and that includes trans women. So that's part of our work. Thank you. And so next slide, Women's Federation staff. And so this is just a rundown of who we are. Oh, nice. I'm up here too. This next slide, this is our team, Candace, Dana, myself, and Jennifer. I didn't put our titles under here, but two of us are the organizers and communication folks. Dana's our admin, Anna's our director, and Jennifer is our HR person. And so as you can see, we are all over the country. We are national, but we're also completely remote. So I do all of my lovely work from Los Angeles and then get to travel to be with folks like you. And we go to things like the Sacred Conference. We do retreats across the country. We're at GA every year. And so our team, as a small, mighty, powerful group of women and gender expansive femmes, we do the work, and it's so great. Next slide is just a slide of our board. Here are the folks that are our directors who also help us do this really great work of community and community building. And as you can see, they are also across the country. We have a small board right now, but if you are interested in being a board member, there is space. So, and our board is not a working board since we have staff. You're more of a visionary and making sure the staff's doing what we're supposed to be doing and raising money. That's really what boards are for, at least on our board. Next slide. And so as I talk about what my work is and what we do at Women's Federation, really the point of all of this is to build relationships. We know that there's no way we can do really good work unless there's trust and community building at the grassroots level. So part of it is that we didn't want to come into the world and say, well, we're going to mobilize thousands of people to get out into the streets and do this. We're going to mobilize tens of thousands of people to do this. We actually said, we're going to start with an online Zoom called a community gathering, and we will just invite women to come and talk. We've invited speakers to come to some of these organizational meetings, and it is not about doing anything. It is about becoming closer allies and friends. So as you can see that we think that deep relationships, not just the action, is actually what gets us to meaningful change. You got to make sure that people are skilled up. You got to make sure that people have trust. You got to be able to make safe environments, because that's really what gets you from the acquaintance level to I'm going out into the world and I'm fighting with you. And that is the kind of work that we want to be building. Next slide. Women's Federation is taking on 4 priority issues. So you guys are working really oh my God, what is that word? Diligently. There it is. You're working very diligently on reproductive justice, which for us falls into women's health. And we take on these other pieces, women in poverty, women in work, protecting women from violence, because we wanted them to be specific enough that you knew where we stood, but general enough that we could pull in work in all sorts of ways. I've done some collaborating. If you guys did the climate revival, you might have seen me in one of those videos. We've done some collaborating with Side with Love. I've done some collaborating with the College of Social Justice. And part of it is that when we pull these things in, women's work, women's health, women in poverty, those are also connected to climate change and climate resilience. That's also connected to missing and murdered women in Indigenous communities. That's also connected to reproductive justice and women's health. And so we take on these really big ideas, but we boil them down into smaller pieces when we have to do those more diligent work. So we did a workshop on the unseen labor that women and caregivers take on. We had a connection between congregations, one in Portland and one in Idaho, that were doing reproductive justice together and putting on abortion stories, right? We were trying to think of what are the ways in which we do this work that is collective and inclusive and also gets to the heart of every piece that we want to take on. And so when you think about reproductive justice and reproductive dignity, I love that you guys have taken in those core values and saying it's not just women who deal with reproductive justice. It is an inclusive and it's everybody's concern. It is not just women who have babies, but it is an inclusive and a concern of lots of people who are able to have these reproductive features. And so that is why we see all of these things fall into our category of work. And we want to make sure that we can actually touch those things that are important and do deep work in those spaces. Next slide. So this question was asked to me quite a bit, like, what even is Women's Federation? How did you guys get here? Women's Federation started in 1963. We are part of the merger. The original Unitarian Universalist merger happened in 61. And then 2 years later, we merged the Unitarian women and the Universalist women. You will still see that there are Universalist women in certain congregations. I guess you guys aren't a specific designation of one, but there are some congregations that have a women's federation or a UU women's designation from their historical Unitarian or Universalist. And so we are those in the way that's connected all of those together. When she talked about women in Dallas that supported Roe v. Wade, those were UUWF women, or at least they were Unitarian women, right? Who would have been folded into that amalgam of the UUWF. Our archives are housed in various locations. And by archives, we mean just meeting minutes, flyers, anything that we've been doing for this really long period of time is mostly housed at Meadville Lombard. We have other different collections. You can see all of this stuff on our website. So I can also say that our website, uuwf.org, you can see all of the ways in which we've connected. We have them links. There are links on what I'm looking at, but they're all links on our website. So we'll go to the next one. So we have different types of programming. And one of our beautiful legacy programming is the Marjorie Bowens Wheatley Scholarships and the Clara Barton Sisterhood. And so this is another connection of what we do to build relationships. Marjorie Bowens Wheatley was Black, I think she was a lay leader, maybe she was a minister. She died a couple of years ago. And so we have a scholarship in her honor that allows BIPOC women to put in for scholarship money so that they can pay a bill or take a sabbatical, whatever it is, but they're going into seminary. And so that is open to any person going, I think, into seminary who's a woman or now gender expansive person. And this is one of those ways that we build community without asking of more things from oppressed peoples. That was what this was really created for. We also have the Clara Barton Sisterhood, which honors UU women who are 80 and older. And so if you have someone who's in your congregation, a woman in your congregation who's been doing justice work and she is 80 and older, you can appoint her as part of our Clara Barton Sisterhood, and she gets a certificate and her name on our website. So we're honoring all of these ways in which we continue to do community work here at Women's Federation. You'll also see that part of our communications comes with toolkits, robust social media presence, and our big sheet, which I think needs a little bit of work, but it is a community hub for where you can find resources on our different priority issues, organizations, other resources, and things like that. All of these things can be found on our website. And mostly I've added this for you to kind of see that what we do since we are national is we put a lot of work into the world. We put a lot of data and work into the world without really asking a lot back from folks. Because what we know is that we can't be your community organizer. We can't, I mean, this is a real joy of being able to come and spend the weekend here in San Francisco, but I can't come every weekend to be your community organizer. And so when we create new things like our toolkits and infographics, some on equal pay, some on reproductive justice, some on working women in the workforce. Those are the kinds of things that we put into the world. And then we hope that you in the congregations will use this work to your benefit, right? We put it out and say, well, if you have any feedback, let us know. There was one time we put out a toolkit that had women in reproductive justice, and there was a woman who historically had been pro repo rights, and then she like flipped her ideas. I can't even think about who this woman's name is, but then she was really detrimental to the reproductive justice movement within her time period. And so someone reached out to us and said, well, actually, she's actually not good as someone to uplift her work anymore. And we were like, thank you for letting us know, because we didn't know. And so part of this community building piece from our perspective is taking an information that you guys have that we don't have access to or that we haven't even added yet and saying, this is how you can help support other congregations. It's building that interconnected web from us out to you and vice versa, from you to us to even more congregations. Slide. And so with that, these are some more of our programmings that we do that the really piece of it is to build community relationships. Like I was talking about earlier, one of the first things we created when I was hired was our monthly community gathering. Casual conversation space. We open with the chalice lighting. We ask how people are feeling. Sometimes we'll have a speaker, but most of the time it's really just to be, how are you dealing in this world right now? It's really hard to make those community connections across time zones when you're not quite sure you know folks. And so we feel that asking more of someone when all we really want to do is make sure that we are building community with you is one of those pieces. So don't come with something that you have to tell us. Come with just the hope of having a bit of community care. Black Women of the Chalice is another example of that. A group of Black seminarians came to us and said, we have this program that we've been doing, but we need some help. We can't keep up with the admin. We can't keep up with the emails. We want to be able to have a monthly programming. And so can you support us? And I said, of course we can support you. And so now we have this beautiful program. It meets second Thursdays and it's open to Black women, femme, religious professionals, seminarians, ministers, admin, RE, music, that whole designation of religious professionals that are specifically for Black women has a space for them to decompress away from the eyes of white people. And it is very moving. It is very beautiful. We have panels. I mentioned a couple. One was the unseen laborer. One was the two cities in Portland and Idaho. We have workshops, which are now offered exclusively for our members. An example of a workshop is we did a big piece on the social change ecosystem. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Deeper Iyer, but she has this beautiful concept of where you fit into the social change map. It's wonderful. And so we taught that to our membership and we did some work around that. And right now we have cohorts. We're in the middle of our first cohort. We're doing the sacred curriculum, which you guys have already done. But we're bringing our own membership through that cohort, and then we'll see how people kind of navigate that. It's about 10 of us, and we're meeting every other Tuesday. And so we get online for an hour and a half. We debrief the work we did the week before. We gather new information about this current work, and then we keep moving. Next time. So part of my job is the individual membership piece. That is a one-to-one, you are a member individually, I'm the membership engagement coordinator, and we kind of connect in those membership ways through our monthly programming, through our cohorts, all of that kind of stuff. And now, one of the things that we have been asked tons of times, when can our group join? When can it be our whole women's group? Do we have to make everyone an individual member to do the work together? And the answer is no. We are launching congregational affiliate membership in a month, which is actually really exciting. So our congregational affiliate, which is, I'm assuming what many of you are kind of like yearning for, is a much bigger piece. And you can go to the next slide because it has all of that big information on it. Sorry if it's small. Oh no, that's okay. People can see that. So congregational affiliate really is sort of we are your community organizer. Every quarter, We're doing this 4 times a year. Every quarter, you'll get a subscription box that has a ton of stuff in it. You'll have physical and digital copies. There'll be curriculums for your congregation or your group. We'll have quarterly check-ins, and then you'll have personal consultations with UUWF staff about your planning, your organizing. A lot of our work is to build those relationships for organizing's sake. And so this affiliate program is to build an even deeper connection with congregations, women's group, gender justice organizations, so that we know as one person, we can't do a lot of work. As a staff of 5, we can do a little bit more work. As a small membership organization, we can do just a little bit more work, but we really know that the work is when you and your congregations have a group together and you're doing your community work here, and there's community work in Los Angeles, and there's community work in Minnesota and Portland, and all of those pieces of community work grow and grow and grow. And that, like Lori says, is actually when we start to make those deeper, more expansive changes across the country. And so we've done this deep work to do individual membership, to give resources for folks who are the one person in their congregation doing something, or the 2 people in their congregations doing something. And now we're expanding that to a congregational affiliate program, because you guys as a group are doing deep, wonderful work. And so I think that's all my slides, but the work around that, I can tell you that the first one will be around gender justice. The very first introductory box will be, here's what we believe gender justice is from the perspective of centering women. If you're familiar with the Uplift work that the UUA does, they also do a lot of gender justice work, and their centers trans people. And so we are still doing gender justice work from the lens of women's health and poverty and such, but we're centering women and gender expansive people. And so there's a little bit of difference if you're wondering what that might be. The other piece to that, you're good, you can leave that. The other piece to that is that the second one, I believe, will be reproductive justice. And so the first box is going to be gender justice. The second one will be reproductive justice, which you guys are really great at. And then every quarter will be a different box. Oh, that's okay. Unless people still need to see the slide. It's that one particular slide. So, and I've given you this really big rundown, and I think I said it at the very beginning, but everything we do is to build relationships. So Lori gave this really long bio of what I do in Los Angeles. I know that Reverend Vanessa has also looked and saw some of the work that I do, and a lot of it comes into knowing people and what they need. So, and a lot of it comes from the structures that the UUA has already put into place. I think covenant building is one of the most beautiful structures we have to do good work together. That's what the Women's Federation does. If you picked up a little bookmark off the table, you'll see that it is our covenant. You can't really build a covenantal relationship unless you have a covenant. They kind of go together. And a covenant, right, is a promise, a way in which we promise to be together and do that work. And so as you guys are building these things, you have a lot of this in place already. You have covenants, you have trust, you have places and people, you've built out your resources, you're doing a lot of this extracurricular community building with Join the Sacred Congregations. I know you guys are apartheid-free congregation. You guys are like head of the game in so many ways. And if you're wondering what you can continue to do, really, it is to make space to build more trust. I mean, many of us have read or gone through some of the widening the circle of concern. And I love the idea of making your circle just a little bit bigger for the next person who comes in. It is moving your seat over just a little bit more so that the next person can also sit down next to you. And that beautiful work of community building is really what gets you to a larger and stronger group of people. I mean, the number of you who wore red today because Lori put it on a flyer, I think is amazing and adorable, right? The trust that you guys have built with your board, with your minister, with the work of doing hard work that is talking about reproductive justice, talking about people's dignity and health and the right to life. Those are really tough conversations that can really only be done when you have built deep relationships with each other. And so I commend First You San Francisco for your very wonderful work that you've done. I'm really appreciative that you've allowed me to come here and talk on for a few minutes. I am much better at answering questions. And so if you have questions around community building, around women's health, around Women's Federation, I am very happy to start answering questions.
Okay, you should have gotten an index card when you registered. So if you have questions, please put them on that index card. I'll read them and either Antoinette or Lori will answer them. So hopefully,
Yeah.
okay, right.
Yay. Are there any questions? And also we have an extra mic. So if you're thinking of your question right this second and you haven't written it down, we can bring the microphone to you. Accessibility.
So hopefully we have questions. Hopefully you have some thoughts here. Ralph, okay.
Couple of questions.
If you have, if we have any questions on cards, you can bring them up and we can get start while we continue to gather them. No?
No one wants to say their question out loud? Yeah, do it. Microphone.
Are you working on national legislation at all? I'm especially concerned about the SAVE Act, which is being introduced into Congress. I think it's 22, HR 22, which basically says that all married women have to re-register to vote with their unmarried name. And I think it's an absolutely horrible, scary thing.
I agree with you. The short answer is no.
Okay.
We are not doing deep work on legislative things, mostly because there's the UU Social Justice Organization, where all of their work is legislative. And there's also, between social justice and then some of the UU the Vote work, we tend to stay out of legislative pieces, mostly because that's hard to keep up with. Right? Your favorite legislation piece is not someone else's. And so then we've got legislation at the federal level, then we've got legislation at the local levels. The things that we did do this past election cycle is that we posted election wins. And so things that went through different states and at the national level that we considered wins on our front were things that we posted on our website. But we are not doing legislative work because it's really all time consuming. And we wouldn't be able to do, I think, the really deep relationship building that we've focused on if we pivoted to legislation work. So I would say to reconnect, if you haven't already, with the UU Social Justice Organization. They're led by their executive director, Pablo de Jesus. He's a really wonderful guy, lives in DC, is really connected to a lot of the DC politicians. And we're trying to stay in our realm of the ecosystem. And so I will put that on our list, though, to look into and see how we're faring with that.
I have a question here. It says,
Yes.
how can we access your toolkit? And can we use it without permission?
Yes. Toolkits are on our website and also in our resource list. So if you find yourself on uuwf.org, you'll find resources. And on that resource page, there's advocacy links that have our different toolkits are linked on there, as well as a link to our resource hub. And if we've already published them out in the world, you can definitely use them. We would want you to share them with folks.
Okay, this one is there a written plan to protest new current laws on access to and right to pregnancy prevention or to helping women receive an abortion?
Not through Women's Federation. So again, all of these legislative pieces. Let me rephrase that. The reason why we build community relations with folks is so that you are inspired to go into your community. The things that we do are some skill ups. We had one on identifying fake abortion clinics, like in person and online. That was an example of something that we did so that you could skill up and then be in your community and help people in your area. What we aren't doing are really general pieces for a whole congregation at the moment, outside of what our congregational affiliate program will be, to dismantle these bigger pieces. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It made sense to me. I hope, did it make sense to you guys? Any other questions? I have no more, and I see no. Oh,
Yeah, my name is David. How do you propose to build community with the people who disagree with us?
Yes. I know that you're going to talk a little bit more about that.
I was going to say, stay
for the next
tuned
thing.
for our calling in demonstration, which Haley will be doing shortly.
What I will say to that is there are different types of people. So you don't have to take on every single role. You can know the types of people you might have some push or pull with. You might be able to talk to someone that I'm not able to navigate. I might be able to talk to someone that you're not able to navigate. Part of it is knowing where you fit in the ecosystem and what you can take on personally. If you're somebody who doesn't get, for example, easily offended, if you have someone who's on the opposite side of you, like on a different value system, if you can actually sit and have a conversation with that person, but you know that your friend, who it means a lot of work to, can't do that, then you can take on that role, right? If you're seeing someone who is saying misinformation or complete disinformation around trans people or gender expansive folks, and you're someone who has the skill set and time to try and dismantle that misinformation, don't wait for another trans person to tell you that it needs to get done. Right? So you find the place where you can stick into the conversation. I don't think you should definitely talk to every single person who you disagree with all the time. I think that you should be able to discern when your voice is the most important or how can it be the loudest in that moment, and when you can step back and allow somebody else with a different skill set to take on that conversation. One of the things that I do a lot of work around is racial justice. And so when people have misinformation or miscommunication around racial justice, I'm happy to step in. Things that I don't know a lot about, and I will give you a real example. I have really deep feelings about Palestine and the Palestinian people, but I'm not an expert in that. And so I move out of the way. And so part of it is allowing people who have the will, who have the vocabulary, who have the willpower to really get out of the way or step in the take space, make space sort of mentality around different issues and allow for that to be a thing. We can do this collectively without trying to take on every piece all by ourselves. And so please, if you take anything from the work that I do and the work of community building, is that it should never be done alone. You cannot be a community of one. I hope that answered your question.
The other day I saw an article about trans people, and that it seemed to me to be very scientific, and something about, I don't remember the percentage, but it's an in utero thing that happens. And I'm wondering, it felt very good to me, really, really helpful in understanding. And I'm wondering if you have any kind of an article, any kind of scientific information on this. Thank you.
I'm gonna ask you maybe to rephrase on trans people in general, on supporting trans people?
No,
Okay.
scientific information about the how do I say about being and feeling trans.
Okay.
Nobody.
I'm not sure if I have scientific information, and I'm gonna tell you why. Is because this might sound really simplistic, but when someone says they are trans, I just believe them. And I wonder if the scientific ask though is to prove to other people who are not in our same value system.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the basis of the question. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in response to that question, I want to say there is some scientific evidence that some people are born that way, but the main thing is a culture where it's self-identified. So if someone self-identifies that, then I think you're referring to respect for that, respect their self-identification.
I think if I understand your question as a not for us, but for them kind of thing. Like, how do I prove to someone who doesn't believe that trans people should exist or believes that trans people are real people? How do I get them to cross over? And I'm going to tell you, there's probably no scientific evidence that can be had for someone who just doesn't believe that trans people get to exist in our world. And I think one of the things that we can do, yeah. Well, I think part of it actually is the more of us who don't shy away from worrying about whether we can prove it, right? If the answer is every time, no, this is just how it is. And I know that's not what people want. People really want to be able to give loads of research and books to read and all of these things to say, well, here's the proof. And the thing that I find with folks who don't have our same values is that they will ignore every piece of real truth. And what we can do is continue to be loudly centered in our values. And so that is the pronoun buttons, the pins. I think one of the things that I've read recently, the PFLAG organization has little booklets, and one that I've seen recently is how to be a trans ally. That's actually something that's really good to put out into the space. If you guys have a library that you let people borrow stuff from, adding that to your library. Other books that I've read are is the quick guide to they, them pronouns. It's really just how can we, again, be in relationship with folks. And I can sense the frustration of not being able to say, I just want to prove that we're right because we're doing the things that are right. And sometimes what we don't do that I want to say the evangelical right does is they just keep saying their same thing over and over again, louder and louder. They don't have better information. They don't have science. They don't have tools, except for they are loud and they say it often. And that is sort of the tool that we need to start using to remind ourselves that just because they're saying it loud doesn't mean that it's true. We don't have to prove anymore that it is our way or their way. We have to stand strongly in our values at all times, outside of church, as often as we can. And after this last election season, I'm not sure that we can just prove with articles and scientific information that our lives are worth living. I think that we have to continue living our lives very loudly to prove that our lives are worth living. Thank you.
I have a question. How do you find community? I'm Mexican, and to us, community is very different than white American community, which I consider very superficial. So how do you define community, and how do you really build community besides the superficial kind of community? I mean, what is community?
Community is safety. Community is care. Community is a great meal at somebody's house that they made for you. And you're right. There is a difference in historically what white UU churches are used to versus what some BIPOC communities are looking for. And I'll say one of the things that I really love about my congregation is that our congregation actually is very diverse. And what we've done to continue to build that community is to ask people what they need and to not shy away from giving them the things that they need just because it isn't the things we've already done. Or that didn't work the last time, and so we don't want to try it again. I think some of the work that comes into community building, like I said earlier, is making your space wider. It's not trying to fold in someone so that they assimilate into your constant culture, but it is actually making space for their particular needs in that particular moment. You guys have an elevator, which meant at some point in your history, you thought it was really important for accessibility between the different levels of your building. You guys have signs pasted, your doxology is in English and Spanish. It meant that at some point in your history, you thought it was really important for someone else that was not exactly like you to be identified, right? And so some of it sometimes comes from being the minority person asking for something. And then a lot of the times, especially if the majority is willing to do so, is to take a step back and say, we would love to have that thing that you're asking for. And so from your perspective, if you are the only person who's Mexican in the congregation, it might be a little bit challenging, but you might be able to ask more for what you think you need, which are, can we have more congregational dinners? Can we have more times where there are board game nights? Can there actually be community pieces where people are talking to each other, getting to know each other without fear or judgment, so that people can have safety in their congregations? So those are the things that you might be able to ask for. And then when people ask for them, we all go, yes, of course. Yes, of course, we will have time where people can get to know each other to build safety. Yes, of course, we will put people's phone numbers in a phone tree in case someone is having a tough time and they have someone to call. You guys have, I think I saw on your board, you guys actually have like a whole pastoral care team. Some of that gets to be trickled within other congregants so that people are not in their same little familiar groups, but people can actually move about the cabin and see folks in their community as their friends and families and networking neighbors. And so for us, for me, community building is taking a step back, seeing what people need, saying yes to that, and then folding it into that community, which makes that community wider and more diverse. I hope that answered your question. I don't know how much time I have. Am I on time? Am I behind? Am I early? Where are we at the time?
I think in terms of time, we're doing fairly well, but if we have no more questions, then we'll ask Haley to take the floor and do a demonstration of calling people in. I think and we've been talking about this. We got inspired by a book by Loretta Ross. I think it was Loretta Ross, called Calling In. And she was an activist for years and talked about how she was able to talk to rapists in prison and, a Ku Klux Klan person and things like that. And I think it's a skill set that's very important for us if we want to make a change, is learning how to have these conversations. Just like Antoinette talked to us about, have these conversations with people who are totally different. And so that's what this is all about. And so we'll welcome Haley to the
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
So there's more of my sheets on the table. I think I've run out. There's a bunch distributed everywhere. It's like the first half of the page is like the whole workshop in a couple of sentences. So you can take it home with you and use it wherever. I'm looking for a lot of feedback on this thing. I wrote it in a furor this morning after digesting this book for like weeks. I'm not going to go into the details of how I came to these conclusions about what we can do. We're just going to go ahead and do it. I mean, we've been talking a lot, so it's time to go ahead and do something. If you want to know why I chose to do this, it's the second half of the page. And where I'm coming from and why I'm saying this is probably a good idea. So first, when you're calling in someone, You got to check in with yourself, with your own body. So to do that, because I'm a little nervous, oh my gosh, I haven't been in front of a bunch of people in a while. I'm going to do this with you. And what you do is, let's take in a big breath. And when you breathe out, we'll do that again. And when you do it again, we're going to scan your body like a sheet of light, scanning through your body from your feet to your head. So we're going to do it again. We're going to breathe in and breathe out. And just feel it. Just feel your body. Breathe in and breathe out and feel your body some more. And just accept how your body feels. If it hurts, if you're tense, just accept it. Breathe in, breathe out, and hug those parts that feel tense, scared, frustrated. Just feel your tension. Go ahead and close your eyes for a sec. Just feel your body and give those frustrated parts a nice hug. Accept them as they are. They don't have to change. Just leave them right there, wherever they are. Breathe in, breathe out. So in this book, she says the first thing you'd have to do is you have to check in with yourself before you talk to somebody on the other side, or somebody who's just got a challenging, different opinion. It could be somebody right next to you that's almost exactly the same opinions as you, but there's something different that you're upset about. And you just check in. And when you're ready, and if you feel like you can hug your own pain, your own tension, you can go forward with trying to call somebody in. So in high stakes conversations, in theatrical improv, one thing we do, and we're learning how to do improvised conversation, which is what any conversation is. It's an improvisation. We say something that's difficult to say. We say yes and to everything the other person has said. That's tough, right? I mean, there's all kinds of horrible things you might hear from friends or family or from the other side that are like, you just don't want to say yes to that. But what I'm saying is we can find a way to say yes and to the same things we worry that they worry about, you know? Like, yes, and my concern, I see your concern, and my concern is this. You don't say no, but. You don't say yes, but. You don't say no, and. You say yes, and, as an exercise for how to further the conversation, how to work together on a compromise, how to build what they're worried about and what you're worried about together into something that starts to solve both your problems. And so what we're going to do today is we're just going to practice some difficult yes ands. So I want you to look to the person next to you, and we're going to give you some really tough ones for you to practice with. I have a couple ringers in the audience there. We have 2 tables there that they're going to help us lead these difficult phrases. And I want you all to take a moment to think about a time when you've had a difficult conversation with a family member or a friend, and you've been very shocked and surprised by what they said. Think about what they said and say it to your partner. And then your partner is going to figure out how to say yes and to that. And you can use this sheet to have some tips and tricks for things you can say that might be kind of yes andy. Now, you don't have to pick the ones that are impossible. You can pick the ones that are like, well, okay. Right? Let's see. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. Here's a good one that comes from the other side, right? So, for example, on my little other side of the sheet, I might say, yes, and I see how the financial problems with the Social Security system are concerning. And I also worry about whatever economical thing you want to talk about or concern. How do we support all these people? How do we support, how do we find a compromise to make it work for everybody, for example? I mean, I'm not going to say this is what you should say, but it's the kind of thinking I want you to think, how do you further the conversation? I don't know economics very well myself. And so get together with your partner, think of a very difficult phrase, and try and think of a way of saying yes and to it. Further the conversation, further creative. Here, if you look at the sheet, we got yes and, that's a good point, and we got yes and, let's figure out how to help that and keep freedom and human rights. Yes, and I'm worried about that too, and I'm also worried about blah, 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 blah. Yes, and my concern is that's the pinch hitter when you really don't know what to say. Yes, and I get you. Let's compromise. Yes, and we're both worried about this. How do we make that happen in a way that works for all of us? Yes, and let's work on the parts we agree on. Okay, so go ahead and try that now.
I can tell you're all having great fun, but it is about time to, and you're welcome to keep talking, but it is about time to call this meeting adjourned. And thank you all for coming. And one of the things we are planning on doing, and we're planning on doing a workshop on this book in the fall, a much longer, more something.
Anybody who wants to practice it after services once a month, I'll be around. We can sit and find ridiculous things to say to each other and figure out how to respond to them. It'll be fun.
But in the fall, we hope to have a more detailed, more formal training for whoever wants to show up. So stay tuned, and we hope you'll join us and read the book. It's an awesome book. Oh, and I've been reminded to offer thanks. Kristen, the stickers, like our banner, Kristen brought us, and we need to thank all those lovely people who were running around cleaning up for us while we were doing all of our work. Oh, and Louise.
And if anyone would like to take any snacks home, we have lots of pretzels and chips and some other little tidbits. Please come up and just take a bag for dinner tonight or tomorrow.
Thank you all for coming, and we'll keep you apprised of the rest of the other activities. Thank you again.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yay.